and welcome to episode 13 of the Brood Sages, Stormbound players with a head for the game. I am Freeloader, and with me as always are my co-hosts, Subaiku and Arthis. Subaiku, how's it going tonight?
Fantastic.
And Arthis, how are you doing?
Mandalorian got spoiled for me. I am very, very sad. I'm mourning right
Oh.
now.
my deepest condolences. We are the Brood Sages, and as a reminder, you can always contact us at Brood Sages on Twitter. Or for all of you who used to play the original 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game in your local arcade, our email address is thebroodsages@gmail.com. All right, guys. So this past week, we had some interesting things. Like, obviously, we played our Stormbound as normal, and we had our brawl that just finished up. But we also had some Black Friday deals. I'll go through a couple of them real quick. Maybe there's one or two that we want to discuss. For all of you big whales out there, and Arthas, I'm thinking you, there was the greatest treasure, $99.99 US, 30 cards from each rarity. That's 120 in total, 1,000 rupees, and 5,000 coins. And next, we had the Emblem of Heroism at $49.99. That's still a little too rich for my blood. And that was just a straight up 35 heroic tomes. Open some packs.
Oh, but the tomes have the +1 card.
Right.
For all of
There
them.
was
They
that,
do
right?
not know.
Oh,
no.
they don't?
Oh.
What?
That
No
was
way.
only available for purchasing rubies. I actually shot Prajoja a DM on Discord to find out if that was the case, and he confirmed it's only available for purchases through rubies. If you bought the pack of 35 tomes with real money, you do not get an extra card.
Dang.
That
Still a good
sucks.
value,
Still a
but
good
not
value, for sure.
not an insanely good value. Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
got an extra card out of it.
Next up, for $20, we're getting into the realm of what I can afford, finding cans to recycle on the side of the road. We've got Edric's Army at $19.99 US. That's the top 18 most played cards in the last 3 months. Guys, I'm not all that excited about the packs, but I'm really excited about the data. This is just really cool. I'm going to read off the cards and we can discuss them real quick. Here are your top 18 most played cards in the game globally over the last 3 months across the entire span from brand new players to D1. Are you ready? Here we go. Execution, Gifted Recruits, Veterans of War, Fell Flares, Dreadfonts, Doppelbox, Green Prototypes, Summon Militia, Personal Servers, Warfront Runners, Confinement, Windmakers, The Hearth, Twilight Prowlers, Call for Aid, Blade Storms, Frozen Core, and of course there has to be a Shadowfen card in there, and clearly the most OP Shadowfen card that's auto-include, Crimson Sentry.
Don't mock Crimson Sentry.
I love Crimson Sentry. He's adorable.
He does his best.
He does yeoman's work.
Unsurprisingly, this is a list dominated by neutral cards because you would assume they see about 4 times as much play as any particular faction card. You know,
One would hope.
Gifted Recruits being in there, not surprising. Green Prototypes in there, not surprising.
Yeah, I would say I would even throw Summon Militia in there is not surprising. I would expect, even though I don't put it in every one of my decks, Summon Militia being one of the few 1-mana cards in the game and card cycling being such an important aspect of the game. Summon Militia, Green Prototypes, Gifted Recruits. If you'd asked me on the street, what are the top 3 cards you'd expect to find in this list? I would have named all of those. Call for Aid, Arthis. I don't know if I would have mentioned Call for Aid.
I have no idea. That was the most shocking one, honestly. But Call for Aid, I don't know. Do you even get that as an early player?
Maybe you pack it early and you're like, dude, Diamond, here comes Diamond 1. I've got Call for Aid.
Definitely, this list is dominated by the new player experience, right? These are all cards that are common with a couple of rares. You know, they're easy for new players to get. They're part of the basic set.
Yeah, not to mention, like, I think a third of the 18 cards are starter cards, like Veterans of War, Personal Servers, Warfront Runners, Fell Flares, right?
Yeah, you get those when you do what do they call them? The single
tutorial.
player mode. The tutorial, yeah. The single player mode gives you those cards. So not a huge surprise finding them. And honestly, if you said, name me a card that winter players play across the gambit, right? I wouldn't have said Gift because Gift is an epic. It's hard to afford when you're new. So Frozen Core probably would have been my guess for the most commonly played Winter Pact card in the game. And I think maybe Windmakers or Destructobots would have been my guess in Ironclad. Doppelbox is 100% my guess for Swarm as the most commonly played Swarm card. Dreadfawns, I guess, would have been a close second. I'm still scratching my head though, guys. Somebody walk me through Crimson Sentry.
All right, go for it, Subaiku.
I played Crimson Sentry quite a bit in Silver and Gold. It was a great 3 mana opener. You would just take over the middle of the board, not necessarily because the effect was so powerful, but because your opponent didn't want to play into the effect. So they would just ignore the Crimson Sentry and try to work around it, which let you just attack their baseline. Now, having been a Shadowfen Rush player pretty much since day one, it's something that's been fantastic for me to open the game just because of the psychological aspect of it, not necessarily that the card is overpowered.
Okay, but in any of those decks, any iteration of a Shadowfen Rush deck that you've ever played, you're telling me you had Crimson Sentry in one of them, but not Dubious Hags.
I don't think that's. I think that's kind of far fetched to say,
Yeah,
but
right?
But the hags definitely come later. They're not part of the starter set, I believe.
Oh, that could be true, but
oh
they're
yeah,
common.
Sure, absolutely. You do get them, but the hags have a downside, so it takes new players a little bit longer to see how good they can be, is my guess.
Okay.
and I guess I mean from looking at this and how a lot of them are starter cards. I mean, even execution I think is a starter card,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy for people to get a lot of to build a lot of investment with their beginning cards when they get so much experience with them, and then it's a bit harder for them to like pick up the newer cards that they find, especially if the newer cards are likely lower level than the ones that they've had longer, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and look, if you don't have, because of the step change effect with witches, right? If you don't have level 3 or higher witches, and you do have level 2 or 3 Crimson Sentry, I think that's probably a fine switch.
Yep.
Like I'm comfortable saying Crimson Sentry could be played there. If you're looking at it just as an aggressive opener card, but you never want to play any sort of defense, like you're an all-out aggressive rush deck, you should be playing like Saber Paws instead, or even Lime Limbs instead.
Sure, but now you're saying play Saber Paws instead, but that's an epic.
Right, exactly. No, I get that. I get that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I would have guessed. I would have guessed Dubious Hags. I think Dubious Hags is one of the most powerful 2-drops in the game, in a faction that wants 1-drops on the board. I would have imagined that. Like, I'm still wrapping my head. Like Windmakers, yes.
I guess it's not so appealing for people to have a downside of a card with Dubious Hag. It's a straight up helping the opponent. I know there are ways to synergize with it, but those are more like implicit synergies. Whereas with
Yes.
Crimson Sentry, it's like, yeah,
Right.
sure, it damages your own friends, but like you have a choice not to do that. Dubious will always spawn the one strength for your enemy.
You're right. People will
That's fair.
always
That's true.
avoid the negative if they can. Hence the question, the most popular question on Reddit and Discord is, right, why are green prototypes useful?
Well, that's true, right? I do think it's very interesting. So every faction, and I don't know if this was intentional or this is just how I read it, right? But every faction, in my mind, is given an overpowered 2-drop, meaning more value than you should get using gifted recruits as your baseline. Every faction is given an overpowered 2-drop with a drawback, and of those four, okay, Rhymelings. Yes, it's a 5-drop, but it's not really. It's a 2-drop because it gives you the 3 mana back. Its drawback is that you can't play it until you have 5 mana. So that's its drawback, is that it's too slow. Or slower, I should say. Destructobot's pretty obvious, right? It's more value than Gifted Recruits, but it hurts one of your other units. Dubious Hags for Shadowfen. And for Swarm, it's Doppelbox. It's more value than the Gifted Recruits, but it's spread over 2 bodies and it can't trade. So it has some drawbacks to it, right? Of those 4 cards, only one of them makes the top list. I'm really surprised by that.
New players definitely tend towards Swarm. It's the easiest to make work with a cheap, low rarity deck, I think.
Not to mention the overwhelming appeal of Moonlit Airy in the lower ranks.
Ooh, there is that, and with Doppelbox and Dreadfawns. Yeah. Okay, Moonlit Area makes a lot more sense. My original reaction to that was, wow, there's a lot of Queens players out there still.
It's totally Moonlit.
Yeah, that makes much more sense.
So yeah, I would definitely say that one of the bigger takeaways, especially for us active community members, like the Discord community and the Reddit community, I'm sure there are quite a lot of surprising cards in these top 18 most played cards for the 3 months. But I think that really does go to show how small our little community bubbles are, especially like in Discord, no matter how many people there actually are in there and how many people are talking and sharing their experiences. It's very, very, very different from the typical Stormbound experience of a player who's maybe not so involved in the community.
I wonder if, now looking at this data and taking that takeaway that you just dropped on us, if it doesn't bring to light even more the motivations that Sheepyard had to just put links to the Reddit and Discord and Stormbound Kitty inside the game, so that all those players who do just open it up on their phone to play a couple of games and enjoy themselves and are totally unaware of its existence beyond just the game now have at least possibly a little line they can pull on, a little string they can pull on, and boom, suddenly they're over there at Discord and it's going, oh my gosh, there's a whole
Wait, aren't
community.
there already links for that? That
There
weren't
are
that
now.
wasn't that?
Yes, that's my
Yeah.
point. Like, of one of the first things that Sheepyard decided to do to the game was try to create a connection from clearly what is the majority of players out there, guys playing personal servers and veterans of war, and because that's what we see here. To your point, that these are small bubbles, and growing those bubbles to become a large plurality or possibly even majority of the players out there would be huge. And yeah, I mean, maybe this drives home a little bit about why Sheepyard thought that was such an important first step. Very interesting. I'm actually gonna twirl. I think I'm gonna try to build a deck with all 12 of the cards coming from this group of 18. See where I can get.
Start at Platinum 5 at the reset.
Oh yeah, and I'll end at Platinum 5 after 2 days of just pulling my hair out.
So the important thing here that I wonder is this list in order of popularity? Is Execution the most popular card?
I wouldn't go so far to speculate with that. There is no hints whatsoever if it was like that.
But it certainly sounds reasonable.
No,
right?
it does not. No.
Execution is in almost every deck that people post on the Discord deck building channel asking for advice.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Which then raises the question, did they have to stretch it out to 18 just to get one Shadowfen card in the list?
The most overpowered faction, people. What are you doing?
Oh my god. Okay, that's a good one. All right.
We're gonna start a Patreon to run billboards around the world, people, so that we can just play more Shadowfen.
All right, well, let's move on.
Yeah,
we
moving
got a
on
lot
from
to
this.
cover.
Exactly. Moving on from this, the final and least expensive pack offered for the Black Friday deals was Raining Cats at, again, US dollars $9.99. And this gave you a bunch of the cats. It was a guaranteed 3 copies of each of the 6 rare and epic felines plus 3 classic tomes. Guys, is like the feline confusion thing at this point just kind of done?
It's gonna need some kind of like rework or whatever. I know it got changed recently in terms of the probabilities of the different outcomes, but like Subaiku mentioned before, with confusion being more of like to stall, and that's very appealing for control. It's not very appealing for control in the fact that it's not guaranteed that they're gonna move sideways or something like that. That it's still RNG. It's hard to like rely on.
Yeah, the one thing, like the name Control should give you an idea. The one thing it doesn't want is random.
Right.
Yeah, as it is, this pack was basically $10 for 3 copies of Wild Saber Paws.
You know what? And in that, when you put it that way, I wonder why I didn't buy it. So we go from what was to what's about to drop, and fortunately for us, the calendar worked out well this month. So this episode is being dropped right as hopefully a lot of you are opening up your client for the first time in December and are starting to thumb through all of your wonderful rewards. And as you do that, you should be aware that there are some changes that have just happened. There are also some wonderful new things coming during the month. And there's even better than that, a promotion that will be hitting your client that you can sign up for. And we're going to walk you through all of those. So, first, and this is the most surprising because apparently it's even surprising to Sheepyard. Arthis, what happened here? The friendly bot got leaked.
Well, apparently, Berzosa leaked on the Discord that they're releasing a feature that's earlier than it should be. It was planned to be released in January, but it was finished much sooner than they expected. And this feature is that now you can challenge the friendly bot whenever you want on your like friends list. So everyone has a friend.
I get a new friend.
But also the most important part, I believe he said that battling this bot on like when you challenge them on friendly battle, it counts for your quest completion rewards. So and it's also really good for people who want to practice outside of like ranked, right? I think this is really good.
You know, those times where you're stuck with a win one with Ironclad, but all your Ironclad cards are underleveled and you can't really play it in ranked, and you lose 5 times trying to win one just to complete a quest. It feels terrible. Having an AI that you can play against makes us just so much better and keeps people engaged and completing their quests and spending time in the game client. And, you know, anything that makes the player experience better makes the players happier.
You probably could also still play with the friendly match like modifiers like the base cap and the card caps and other things like brawl if you want to practice brawl decks against a bot. But I'm not sure if the bots would have brawl decks necessarily. I know someone asked Berzosa about that and they are thinking of adding those, but let's assume for now they won't have brawl decks, but it's very good for practice.
There are a lot of times where Subaiku is just so angry at me he won't play, and so I have no one to challenge, and now I will.
I played the fifth.
All right, so next up, after that surprise drop, we also have what has to be one of the most unique promotions I think that I've ever seen in a game. Subaiku, have you ever seen anything like this? Walk us through the Advent calendar.
Definitely the first time in my almost year of playing that I've seen something like this. The Advent Calendar event in December will have daily rewards for logging in, but there will be a free tier and a paid tier. So the free rewards, if you total them up over the month, are going to be 400 coins, 50 rubies, 11 fusion stones, a handful of cards at different rarities, and a heroic tome, which is not too shabby just for playing a game that you're playing anyway. For 10 US dollars, you can instead upgrade to the premium rewards, which seems to be about 4 times as many of each resource, more cards, and adds a mythic tome onto it. This is for admittedly for the duration of a month spread out for 31 days, but it's definitely for value for your money better than the $10 weekly packs that are offered. So if you are thinking about spending some money in Stormbound, and I am not trying to persuade you in any way, but if you are inclined to do it, this is definitely a good time.
Yeah, I think actually we should mention that like so in the spring when Paladin was running, there were several times where I had mentioned in Discord that I was thinking about buying, $10 worth of rubies or whatever, and everyone suggested no, don't do it now. Wait till there's a sale was something that several people had said, and Sheepyard seems to have turned that up a notch. Because there wasn't a sale for a long time until
Yeah.
the anniversary, right? But now we're seeing these promotions and the value, Subaiku, to your point, and for those of you who don't know, Subaiku has a spreadsheet, and we have several volunteers. We have not published this the way we've published the meta report, but we are tracking the different amounts of value and trying to create equivalencies between the different packs that are offered at different times.
Yeah, this is really more for personal use. This isn't for publishing, but I'd be happy to discuss it further if anyone wants to reach out to me.
Right. But the point that we do want to try to send to our listeners, these promotions, especially if they're going to be fairly frequent, these promotions are when you should spend your money. If you know you want to spend money in the game, oh my gosh, do you get so much more bang for your buck? I mean, Arthis, could you imagine if you had spent the money you spent, but had been able to do it on buying 10 advent calendar upgrades?
I don't mind spending it during the anniversary event because I don't think there's gonna be a sale as big as that one for a long while.
Yeah, no, that was a good one too.
That was so good.
But the Halloween one was great.
Yeah. And I'm definitely buying premium tier or whatever it's called for the advent calendar because I would say it's totally worth $10, at least for an active player like me. And one thing to note that's important though for people who are are more interested with the advent calendar is that you do have to log in every day of December to get all the rewards. And if you happen to miss a login on a particular day, you actually do not get the rewards for that day ever. You miss it. But you are still moving forward in terms of like, let's say you miss day three. Day three is your fusion stones, okay? Because it kind of cycles between coins, rubies, fusion stones, and a card. That's how it cycles through. But let's say you missed the fusion stones. Yeah, there's no way for you to get those fusion stones back. But on the fourth day, you're gonna get your card when you log in. That's how that works. So if you want to if you are going to spend for the premium, do the best you can not to miss a day. All you gotta do is log in. You don't even have to play a match. So that's it. Set your alarms.
Honestly, I'm so excited about this. I love the idea of opening up the game client and immediately like my favorite day of the month to play Stormbound is the first of the month, right? Because I'm gonna open up and the first thing that's gonna happen is it's Christmas, right? Every month on the first is Christmas. I'm so excited to see what I got. And this is just gonna be like that every day. Like, okay, not the same level of cards, right? Like, because you get so many from winning your chest, but it's just gonna be like you opening a present every single day of December. This is awesome. You darn right I'm spending the $10 because I want the best present I can get. I was a good boy this year.
You know, like I said before, anything that makes the players happier keeps people playing longer, keeps them more interested, and these little things, they go a long way. They don't really cost Sheepyard anything if they did it more frequently. So I hope we do see things like this going forward. Maybe not quite for $10 a month. I think that's maybe a little too much to ask for outside of a one-time event. But I'm certainly not averse to a sort of paid version of the game that maybe removes ads and gives you login rewards or daily check-in rewards like this.
Yeah, so they mentioned in the patch notes when they announced the advent calendar that it is undecided currently if they are going to continue with this sort of like type of feature. Like if they were to implement it again outside of this year's Christmas, like in like the rest of next year or something, they will most likely have it with much fewer rewards because the advent calendar is intended to be special for Christmas. But it is not, like they said, it is not impossible that they might continue it, but just with less. It's just undecided for now if they want to take it in that direction. But it's cool that Sheepyard are exploring the different ways that they can be getting some good support from the players. If players are subscribing to these kind of features, and also just like typical free rewards for anyone to slightly boost the economy a bit.
Yeah, I mean, write your congressmen, write your senators. We need to do just an all-out blitz campaign through all December to try to convince Sheepyard that this is awesome, and more awesome is better than less awesome. So give me more awesome in January. This is great. I'm very excited about this. So that's the exciting promotion for December. Moving on from there, we also have some balance changes. Okay, so our Bestoic protectors, aka Basano, aka Stoic protectors, as we've suggested, just wasn't enough tempo. It certainly is a decent value in silence, but for the mana, not enough tempo. And it looks like Sheepyard agreed, because their strength is increasing from 2, 3, 3, 4, 5 up the levels to instead 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it gets 2 bigger at the top end and 1 bigger at the small. And Arthis, what do you think?
I mean, it makes sense that they are increasing the strength because just the strength itself, I mean, is extremely low. Strength from 2 to 5, as it is currently, like before the patch hits live. That's absurdly low for a 4 mana, 0 movement card. I mean, and then not to mention the ability itself is really hard to get some real value with, so it's most often a vanilla card, but with much less value than a typical vanilla card. It's nice that they are upping the strength, and not just that, the strength actually increases every level. The other version, like the current version right now, from level 2 to 3, the strength of Stoic Protectors does not change at all. So it's good that it's now a strength from 3 all the way to 7, which, keeps it a little more in line in terms of vanilla value, but still not entirely. I know a lot of people in the Discord have been talking about that, oh, this change is like really not enough. It's still a useless dead card because it's really hard to pull off the ability. And people are thinking you should have like given it one movement or something so it could have some sort of use outside of the ability. But Vizosa was very clear on his word that this is how they intended the design of the card to be, and they are happy with the data that it's showing, that they're gonna keep it probably without movement.
I think it's reasonable to have it not move. I think the biggest challenge to it seeing play right now, well, the two challenges really. Number one is just it's a new card. People don't have it at level unless they had a ton of fusion stones lying around, and that one you can't really overcome. And then problem number two is just that it costs too much at 4 mana. I know it's a very powerful effect when you get it to work, and it can neutralize something that's a lot stronger than it. But if they had, instead of increasing the strength, decreasing the mana cost, I think that would have incentivized more people to play around with the card and try to understand, is it something that's actually powerful and something I can actually use? But at 4 mana, it's just a little too expensive for that kind of experimentation.
I totally agree. I think, at 4 mana, it's just too expensive, because we've mentioned before, a lot of times you can't find a target, you're going to want to cycle it. And so at 4 mana, it becomes well, I can't just play it for the body. It's too expensive. So that now needs to be the card in my hand that I cycle. And, in a control deck, there could oftentimes be not a lot of cards that you can afford to play.
Don't
So
get me wrong. I think that with the strength increase, if you do just play it for the body,
it's getting there.
it's not great, but it's
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
partially viable. But if you play it and you get even one trigger off of it and you get the body out of it, then I think it actually is a worthwhile
It's a
card. It's
decent
just
card. Yeah, decent.
the question is just how often are you going to get that trigger off of it, and I don't really know.
With the meta and the way that people tend to play cards and make their decks, I would actually disagree that it doesn't need like a mana reduction. The game just needs more cards for the Stoic Protectors to cancel out, because there aren't that many that people are playing nowadays that are easy for you to just like silence. They were more common. 4 mana is pretty decent for that powerful ability.
That's a really good point. And as they release new cards in the next few months, we might be really glad that we got the Stoic Protectors early so that we had them leveled up to counter the new cards.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, but this is clearly a controlling card, right? We agree
Yep.
this is a control oriented card. If I
Yes.
go to the BS meta report and I take a look at archetype frequency, there's only one control class. Like the second, the runner up is Shadowfen, right? But it's Winterpack. Winterpack has, out of nowhere, the best silence tools in the game, and it's not Bestoic Protectors, right? Like the
Right.
the
But this let other factions now
Sure.
do what Winter Pact can do naturally, and that lets them compete as a control deck, and you can't discount that.
Well, so Shadowfen wants to just steal it instead, so it doesn't care about silencing it either. So really finding a home for it in a control deck is Ironclad or Swarm,
Both of
right?
which the control decks tend to be tower based, right?
Sure, yeah,
So
yeah, okay, yeah.
so
Lots of
something
true
like
shot and
this where
killers.
you're removing, say, the effect off of your opponent's Shady Ghoul and not letting them advance their front, like it's a powerful enough effect.
I wish that Bisanu Stoic Protectors had been released a month before the changes to winter. I think the changes to winter are ideal. They're perfect. I'm so happy with them. But we'll never I feel like we'll never know how good a card Stoic Protectors could have been, because immediately upon its release, there was already a better option for that kind of effect. It's just sad. I don't know. To me, it seems like a lost opportunity. Yeah. So moving on from there, we have Archdruid Erin, which can no longer freely cast spells costing more than her own casting cost. Arthis, why?
Wow.
What is this?
What are the spells in the game that are more than 7 mana? I wonder.
Oh, wait. I know what it is. Wait, is Call for Aid 7 or 8?
No, thankfully you can still play your Call for
Oh,
Aid, as we
thank
know that's one of the
God.
most popular cards in the
yeah,
game.
yeah. This is the only reason people play Archdruid Erin. It's for Call for Aid. I mean, it is the most common card out there. Thank God they didn't nerf Call for Aid Erin, guys. Oh man. But no, in all seriousness, the only card out there that Aaron cannot cast freely now is Gift of the Wise. You know, pretty not surprising that we finally got an Aaron Gift of the Wise nerf. But that means that you can't play Gift of the Wise at 7 mana now, and having a 15 strength body on the board for free.
But Subaiku,
Yeah.
they had already taken care of not being able to play Gift of the Wise on 7 when they nerfed it to 8, right? Why didn't that work?
Yeah, all that did was just incentivize people to play Archdruid Aaron with it, and now the combo is finally split up. I think that was the cleanest way to do it. Very happy with this change. I think it incentivizes new styles of play for both Winter Pact and for people trying to use Aaron. I mean, now you can get that Aaron Call for Aid combo that we jokingly suggested earlier, or maybe like something like Dark Harvest and Needle Blast and a chip damage controlling Swarm deck. The possibilities start to open up, because now you're not looking at something that is so obviously a tier stronger than everything else.
Yeah, it was
Right.
broken. It was broken.
I think this is a nice change, that this change only impacted Winter because Winter was the only one that made it too powerful to be healthy. It's nice that it doesn't nerf the other factions that are using Aaron for Aaron's like design, you know?
Yeah, in fact, shameless plug for all of you out there looking for what to do with your Aaron deck. May I suggest my Aaron Toxac Shadowfen control deck? It's not getting a lot of play. No one's using it.
No, Aaron Broken Truce is better. I don't know what you're talking about.
The trick is you have a level 4 Aaron and then Call for Aid and Toxic Sacrifice in your hand.
It all just goes away. Oh my god. All right, so from there, we move on to Void Surgers. Void Surgers required only 2 enemy units surrounding it to proc. It now requires 3. Subaiku, what do you think?
I do like this change. This takes Void Searchers out of something that you put in every deck and reduces it to something that you really just want to play in a controlling deck, which I think was the intent behind the card in the first place. I was already, honestly, having a little trouble playing it in a mid range deck, just trying to get 2 opposing units on the board in an area where I wanted to play Void Surgers had been getting difficult. People were starting to play around it, which is not surprising because it was everywhere. They were playing it all the time. Now, making that 3 surrounding enemies makes it just a little bit harder and makes it something that you don't really want to just, I don't know what to do at 5 mana. I don't have any cards. Let's just jam Void Surgers in there. It makes you think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I really like that it doesn't change the design and the usefulness of Void Surges in general, because I was so scared that they were gonna nerf the ability or something, and knowing that will honestly kill the card. Because what's so nice about Void Surgers, compared to its very similar cousin, being Victors of the Melee, what's very nice about Void Surgers is that it does an incredibly large amount of damage compared to Victors. Capable of clearing many, many, many cheap units. Victors can do lots of damage, yeah, but a lot of units survive that damage, and Void Surgers kind of takes that niche better than Victors, which is good that they're quite distinct cards. And I was so afraid they were gonna nerf the ability, and I would have said, yeah, that would have totally killed the card. It's nice that it still has its use for clearing cheap units and dealing large damage to larger bodies, but it's also really healthy that now it's requiring 3 surrounding enemies. It requires a lot more setup now for me as someone who's really good at baiting enemy positioning. I mean, it does impact me, but not too much. I'm still gonna be using this card. I know a lot of people maybe would shy away from it now because it's a bit harder. And it's nice because with Void Surges being surrounding, I know there was a lot of talk that it's like very hard to play around because surrounding just like takes a huge chunk of the board. But now they don't have to fret so much if they have 2 units of their own that are surrounding, because Void Surges won't do anything to those 2 units. There needs to be 3. They can play the third card around.
As a mostly rush player, I'm very much looking forward to this change.
Yeah, the whole sort of I can get 1 unit into the corner and 1 unit kitty corner to it to protect it. I just played into Void Surger's conundrum is really, that was difficult. Now if you need, if there needs to be a third unit nearby to proc it, well, that makes it much, I can put it into column 4 in the corner, column 3 a row back to protect, kind of a thing. Or maybe I could even get it to the baseline, and then from there throw something into column 1 if it's later in the game and I can afford to play 3 units.
Yeah.
Playing around this now is very viable. Playing around it with only 2 units to proc, it was impossible. You just couldn't.
You're playing around it basically meant hoping your opponent didn't have it.
Correct. Right. That's exactly right. All right. So moving on from there, Lasting Remains. Guys, I had to look this up. Did you know that this was a card in
This
Swarm?
is a good card.
Yeah, come on.
Lasting
If any-
Remains.
Yeah, keep going.
Lasting Remains is a fun card.
Yeah, it's a fun card. It commands itself forward after it attacks. Its health was 7, 8, 10, 12, 15. That's been buffed to 8, 9, 11, 13, 15. So at level 5, if you already had level 5 Lasting Remains, bless you. And my poor child, you won't see a buff, but everyone else will see a 1 health buff to their Lasting Remains. I will say I have died to Lasting Remains. It was a long time ago, but I played Reign of Frogs, which all columnated in column 1. And the frickin' Lasting Remains from his baseline killed me.
Majestic.
I was so tilted. All 4. It was my Reign of Frogs back then only made 4 frogs, and all 4 of them went in the same frickin' column.
Just like the stars aligning, the frogs aligned.
And then he gives me the emote of like the wide eyes, and I'm like, what does that even mean? And then he plays Lasting Remains. So anyway,
I think it is worth noting that with the new Lasting Remains, at level 1, it is a straight up power creep of Veterans of War. It's not really that big of a deal. Veterans of War isn't really that popular, and also it's only level 1 where it is objectively better. Because at level 1, it is also 8 strength. Same with Veterans of War, but it has the moving forward ability after
Right.
attacking. But as soon as you start leveling it up, level 2, 3, 4, it becomes like just a little bit weaker than Veterans, just by like 1 strength, as it normally would be.
in general, I think it's always good design in games, card games, to have your faction specific cards be a little stronger than the neutrals, right? Because otherwise what ends up happening is everyone only plays the neutrals, because why would you play your faction cards that are weaker?
Right. And then 90% of each quote unquote faction deck
feels the same.
It's the same neutral cards.
Right. So I'm happy that Lasting Remains is a little bit stronger than Veterans of War. I'd like it to be more so. If Veterans of War is seeing that much play, I'd really like to see more powerful 7 drops in each faction that justify play over Veterans. I think that would be good for the game.
And plus, these are some nice buffs to Swarm. I mean, okay, oops, a bit of a spoiler. Oh no.
Oh no! Oh no! So guys,
Well, let me stay on this one for a moment though,
you go
because
right ahead.
I want to say the one thing that I love about this change is that it doesn't impact the card at level 5. It's just a straight up buff to the lower levels, just trying to say, hey, try this card out. It could be good. It could be useful. Don't just play Veterans of War.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. So if you were familiar with Lasting Remains being a card, perhaps you might or might not know that Petrified Fossils is also a card in Swarm. Petrified Fossils, which was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for health up the levels, will now move to 5, 6, 8, 10. Oh, pardon me, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. That's a pretty big jump. Level 4 is now what was level 5, and level 5 is just 2 stronger than ever. But on top of that, and I think this is where the buff is more impactful, their ability will now proc not only for the weaker units on the board after it survives damage, but after it survives damage, all units that are equivalent in strength or weaker will be commanded forward. So, guys, what do you think of this, Arthis?
Well, for the lower levels, level 1 to 3, the only real buff is that now it procs an equal strength. So that is like a +1 ability type of buff. And just a bit of a buff, at level 4, +1 strength. 5 is really cool. Now it's another heroic soldiers power creep. Oh, poor heroic soldiers.
Right? No. So this is interesting because it's the opposite of the Lasting Remains buff, right? The lower levels don't really see a strength increase, but this is encouraging higher levels players with the max collection to try to play around with this and experiment with this card.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this would, I mean, it would definitely see a little more play now that it can defend much better than it normally could, and it can trigger better than it normally could. But because of its weird niche, that it's not really up to you to decide what units are going to be moving forward. And I know some people are thinking, oh, but like, of course it's up to you. You'll know which units are gonna move forward after you attack. Problem is, you don't choose the enemy's strength that's going to be on the board. You can't choose how much strength you're going to end up with. You just work with what you have, right? And that's what makes this card so hard to use and so hard to feel like you've gotten value for something as expensive as 5 mana. So I don't know if it's going to like make the card common or anything, but it definitely helps its like state. It makes it much more healthy and more appealing for lower level people, or especially higher level people. Yeah.
Subaiku, does it feel to you like the command effect, just in general, not specific to Petrified Fossils, but across all of the cards, does it feel to you like it's a mechanic that you would build around for like a mid-game continually commanding nonstop, or is it an end game effect?
Personally, I only really use it as an end game effect. I think part of that is because Herald Tim is so expensive mana wise that you can't play other stuff with it. All you can do is move what's already on the board. So naturally, you want to do that to close the game out, as opposed to just saying, oh, I just spent 7 mana for a potion of growth and now my turn is over.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, Forgotten Souls, you use that to close out a game just because the body on Forgotten Souls is so weak, it's such a tempo loss. Again, you want to play it more in a rush style deck, and having a weak tempo in the mid game does not help you out when you're playing a rush deck. Now, I want to say that with the caveat that I have certainly played those cards in the mid game, Forgotten Souls, just as something to help move your front to maneuver around an obstacle, to help base lock, or to lock in your front. It does have some sort of niche use there, but to the point that Arthis made, you're using it in a controlled manner. That way you're moving specific units. You're not moving everything on the board and risking losing your front. You trade your Petrified Fossils into something that's 2 strength, and it moves everything else you have into their baseline. That's great. You did a bunch of damage. Now you only have 1 unit that your opponent needs to clear, and that's just not viable.
So, Arthas, I've always thought of Harold's Hymn as sort of Forgotten Souls with Pog already together, right? Like Forgotten Souls Pog is a great finisher. You pog something on the board, you then push it into their baseline, Herald's Hymn basically does that all in one card, and it's give or take the same cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Petrified Fossils to me feels like you played Forgotten Souls on some units, and then you pogged the Forgotten Souls.
I like that 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 analogy. It's weird to fit this in the archetypes, especially the three main archetypes we define, and that's rush, mid range, control. Like Subaiku already mentioned, this is not entirely appealing for rush because of the lack of like security on your board positioning, being it so important for rush. For control, I mean, sure, it has more strength, can clear better units, but then you're at that point you're not really using it for the ability, and commanding your units forward isn't really something control is looking for. If anything, control wants to push the enemy units backwards, not the other way around. For mid range, I mean, I don't know, Swarm doesn't have very good mid range except like maybe like Moonlit Airy. I guess Petrified Fossils would be very interesting with like Zudex, you know?
Right, but
Especially
in theory, you've buffed everything out of range of petrified fossils anyway,
yeah,
Oh,
right?
that's
Like
such a good
that
point, right?
yeah.
you want to play Bucks of Wasteland and get everything high strength, and then all of a sudden the fossils don't trigger because nothing's weaker than it. Like
Yeah, so
that's the
it's
hope, at
really
least.
hard to fit in the three main archetypes of this game.
I got it, guys. So it's only usable for me because but here's where it's gonna. So when I play Summon Militia, it is guaranteed on my baseline. I don't know what it is about my account. I don't know if like I opened my account on the wrong day, but Summon Militia only ever goes on my baseline. Now we've talked about this in control decks. That's terrible. You want to be on your second row. So for me, Petrified Fossils will be useful as a way of just bumping my Summon Militia forward a row so it does something.
The foundation of the problem starts with you playing Swarm Control.
All right, that's that's very fair. Okay, guys. Well, that's going to end the main portion of this episode, which means it's time for me to remind you to please follow us on Twitter at BroodSages, and you can always email us at thebroodsages@gmail.com. Before we head out, we just want to make mention that there was some feedback. Roman and FP said in Discord, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. Spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, and your quality is very high considering you're just starting out. Now, Roman, I want to say first off, thank you so much. And we're going to use the excuse that we're just starting out for at least the first 50, possibly 100 episodes. So that we can just kind of hide behind that and say we're doing really good for people just starting out.
Everyone knows the first 3 years are practiced.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You know, we'll hit our stride sometime in 2025. Before then, just bear with us. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. For Arthis and Subaiku, I am Freeloader. We are the Brood Sages, reminding you to stay hydrated.